What's going on, guys? So coming back for Ultimates issue 12. Now that Tony Stark is back, there's a lot to unpack in this one, so we're just gonna get right to it. But if you need to get caught up on our coverage on the Ultimates, I have that playlist down in the description, as well as the full Ultimate Universe playlist, which is at over 50 videos now, because that's where we're covering this and everything else. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, this starts off on the Beast, which is like the Hand's flagship cumulo carrier. And it almost feels like every time we see this place, the Hand has taken someone new into custody, because now we see they got Dupe, who's equal parts powerful, weird, and mysterious. But right away, this just adds on to what we've seen with them bringing in Howard the Duck, as well as Omega the Unknown. And it's pretty crazy, because now we're adding one more hero, outside of the ones we've been introduced to the long list of heroes who have been handled by the Maker. And it kind of makes you think like, man, if only someone could turn back the hands of time, because I still need some answers about some of the deceased individuals we saw in that damage control facility a while back. And those answers might be in this issue, but I'm gonna step around that rabbit hole for right now. But going into this, we start out with a conversation with Director Fury and another individual who will be revealed in a moment. But do keep in mind that this Nick Fury is just one of many who the Maker's Council has just destroyed and replaced through a series of multiple life model decoys, with all of them basically repeating the same behavior traits, though in different ways, with each and every one of them betraying the Council in a different way, which is what leads to all of them being terminated and replaced. And it's something that I think is very important to keep in mind when it comes to Director Fury, and not so much in the idea of his eventual betrayal and termination, but more so in the case of his behavioral patterns, because a lot of what we got in Ultimates 1 year in is going to be foreshadowing how we see this guy move and operate. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But in this conversation, someone's telling him that Tony, Iron Lad, has called a meeting. And we find out here that Director Fury knows about the Triskelion satellite, because he asked them like Tony had the entire network on the satellite, only for them to tell Fury no. Half of us were there remotely. After what happened in heaven, they never assembled the entire network all at once. So that's where Fury's like, they've learned. So he goes on to say, alright, start from the beginning. What happened at this meeting? Which from here takes us back to the meeting, which starts with Tony showing all the Ultimates their fight with Ultimate Hulk. But instead of Doom getting them out at the last second, in this footage, they all die. And if you guys remember, many of the Ultimates had expressed before how they were having the exact same nightmare with the fight playing out this way. And now that Tony's back, since he already had the Immortus engine wired throughout his nervous system, he of course has seen the same thing, but given the way that he's built, it allows him to play it back for the others. So now with everyone seeing it together outside of their own nightmares, this has people who were there like Janet saying, wait, that's my nightmare, how did you get that footage? But again, everyone who was there had been having the same dream. And you have members like Hank who thought it was perhaps post-traumatic stress, and he was literally getting ready to seek help about it, but it raises a lot of questions when everybody's been seeing the same thing. So Tony says here, it's not just a nightmare. And he looks to the side like, tell them, Doom, or I will. But Doom doesn't say anything, so Tony's like, fine. And there's this pause before Janet's like, Tony, what's going on? So Tony goes on to say, since I fused the Immortus engine with my nervous system, freezing myself forever in the decasecond before death, I've been catching up on what I missed. The engine allows me to see through time. Well, sometimes. I'm still figuring things out. Because when Tony looked back on the day that he died, for him it was like seeing two versions of the events superimposed. Like two competing signals, with one going stronger and one fading out. One where Doom got them out just in time, and the other one where he didn't. Which right here is just a straightforward way of Tony telling them that they all died that day. Horrible deaths, and that their nightmares actually happened. Which is something that I think was pretty obvious once we knew that everyone was having the same nightmare, that I assumed at the time would be the thing that changed Tony's mind about the no time travel rule. And aside from this, Doom even said in issue 6, one mistake and everyone is dead. Again. And that part I did not catch, even after going back to read issue 6 when issue 11 came out, because it just sounded like Doom was talking about the botched attempt at bringing back all the superheroes. And it almost feels like Dennis Camp knew that, and he just waved the answer in our face the whole time. And it's like now that we've reached the point where the truth is being revealed, it still hits because there's a lot of twists and turns here. And you can't always say that when a writer uses foreshadowing, because there's a thin line between it feeling too obvious and it feeling like a lazy cop-out. But I love how this is done, because next, Doom speaks up, and with a sigh he tells him it was very messy. By the time I found you, what I found was unacceptable. So I intervened. That was what happened. But it didn't have to be, and it isn't what happened anymore. I saved your lives. You are welcome. And the different responses we see to this are pretty hilarious. I can almost hear Luke Cage's response through the page. But following this, Tony leans into the whole thing, because he says here, you've been lying to us, Doom. You've been lying to all of us, and you broke your agreement. And Doom's like, I saved your lives. I saved the Ultimates. Our agreement? You should be kissing my feet. Everything I have done, I've done for the cause. So right there, Tony says, and what about Project 4? But Doom gets quiet again, as Tony goes on to say, all that time, supposedly working out the correct dose of cosmic energy. All a lie. Those poor dead mice. All that time, you've been trying to break through the Maker's barrier to radically change the past, all behind our backs. So Doom tells him, if you want an explanation, I'll give it happily. But if you seek contrition, I'm afraid the capacity was long ago cut out of me. I am Doom. You must accept this, and all it means, as I have. So America tells him, you're irresponsible. You could have destroyed everything. You know what happened to the Guardians. You could erase this world. And Doom just throws up his hands like, what in this world is so worth saving? Tell me. Then he looks over at Tony saying, fix the world. Those were your words. That is the supposed purpose of the Ultimates. Well, I am trying. Can you say the same? Can any of you say the same? And there's an element here where it's like what Doom did was definitely taking a huge risk, like we learned from the Guardians back in issue 8. So it makes sense when we see the other Ultimates react to it like, hold on, rewriting reality? That's wild. Or saying things like this isn't what we agreed to. And when they start to get into the whole thing about Doom breaking through the Maker's barrier and asking if he even had any kind of plan after that, Tony comes through here with a burning question. Because before they go any further into the details, and with Doom already admitting that he'd been hiding the truth, this now has Tony asking him, is that why Doom waited till after the Hulk crushed Tony to pull everyone out, as a way for Doom to cover his own tracks? And it's a wild accusation, but it's still a very valid question, which now just has Doom like, is that really what you think of me? So Tony tells him, I don't know what to think. It just seems a bit convenient, doesn't it? I'm the only other one who could have understood what you've been doing. Why else? Why would you let that happen to me? And I'm telling you, you can almost feel the pain in Doom's response. Because he says here, I tried, Tony. It wasn't just separate space-times. I had to save you without uncreating myself, or this version of myself. The further away your deaths were from me, the more difficult that became. The more enmeshed your deaths became with my life. With every passing second, the calculations became 10 to the 23rd power times more complex. I tried. I tried to get you out before. From the beginning, I tried to save you. But even with the time machine, I ran out of time. Everything I touch, all doomed. I miscalculated again. Which right there just goes back to what we saw in Ultimates issue 4. When the Maker tampered with Reed's calculations and turned him into Doom. Ever since then, Doom has been obsessed with making sure things are right and not failing the people who are depending on him. And I'll admit, when Doom was working on Project 4, I bought into all of that. And I mean, he was still trying to save his family, but he wasn't honest about how he was doing it or how dangerous that could be for everyone. But Doom's intentions at the time, as well as his obsession for perfection, all of that still plays its role here. Because Doom believes it was his error that failed Johnny, Ben, and Sue. So ever since, he's wanted to make sure that he will never make an error again by being certain that his calculations are correct. And that's why it was such a big deal at the time when Doom saved them, when he said 7 seconds and 7,000 unknowns. Because at the time for Doom, taking action without having the certainty of how it would play out, this went totally against who he'd become. And it's not easy for him. It was what he needed to do, and it basically sets the stage for who the Ultimates need to become. But as he goes on to say here, it won't work without you. None of it works without all of us. So Tony tells him okay. But Doom goes on to tell him, I had to save you, even if it meant risking. And again, Tony's like, Doom, it's okay. But Doom keeps going and he's like, it's not okay, Anthony. Nothing's okay. Don't you see, it's not working. We haven't made enough progress. Not close. We're running out of time. And America agrees because they saw a version of what lies ahead by way of Captain Marvel from the Super Guardians or the Guardians of the Galaxy from the future. Because before America lost her memories, she saw all of this for herself. So Doom asks Tony, since the Immortus engine can look into the past, if he can use it to confirm the future. And Tony tells him that he's tried, but every time he tries to see past the Maker's return, everything Tony sees after the city opens is just white. So Doom says here, you're right. If I can break the Maker's barrier, I will save my family, fix at least one piece of this world. Isn't that what we all came here to do? I will make a better world in this one's place, even if there is no place for me in it. A world without Doom. So Tony's like, you haven't thought this through. God, this is basically complexity science. Your actions will have unpredictable, unintended consequences. They could lead to something worse. So Doom tells him that's true of any action we might take. And yet still, we must act, even with incomplete knowledge and knowledge of our incompleteness. Much like how Doom saved them without absolute certainty of how it would play out. So Doom tells Tony here, you talk of revolution, but when the decisive moment comes, even knowing we will fail, knowing for an absolute certainty, you refuse to take the necessary steps. What are you waiting for? This world is a prison. What do you have to lose but your chains? That is why I lied and obfuscated. I knew you would not approve, but I knew also that I was right. Radical action and imagination are what are called for now. I assure you, I have thought this through. So again, Tony just says, okay. And Doom just like, what do you mean okay? And I said the same thing first time I read it, because this is the twists and turns that I'm talking about. Because Tony tells Doom here that he didn't bring everyone together to put him on trial. He just wanted to get everything out in the open, so they all could decide on the future of the Ultimates together. Which really, I think it's a creative way to confront a friend who you've caught in a lie. Because Tony's basically like, yeah, you lied to all of us, here are the receipts, and he could have pulled Doom to the side and talked to him about it that way. But this involves everyone, and now that they all know what really happened, they can all come together and decide on what's the next move. And this is where Janet asks Cap what does he think about all this, and Cap's just like, Doom's right, which catches everyone off guard, including his longtime friend Jim Hammond, the Human Torch, and even Doom. But also the way Cap sees it, he doesn't think trying to break through the barrier is a good idea either. Because if Doom hasn't done it by now, there's no guarantee that it's just going to happen in the next 6 months. And Cap also makes it clear that he doesn't want to go back to the origin box method, because Steve still stands on the idea of that being a failed concept. And on top of that, he tells him what they're doing now is not working either, because never mind what's in the future or the past, if they're no match for what's in front of them right now, let alone whatever the maker's bringing once the city opens. So Steve tells them here, the Ultimates have been scattered, fractured, and disoriented, and I blame myself. I've been thinking small like a soldier, instead of what we need. And I feel like he was about to say Captain right there, but he goes on to say, truth is America Chavez and Mr. Cage have been much more effective than I have. We can learn a lot from them. So right there, Luke Cage is like, I could recommend some reading materials because he's been doing a lot of reading over the past 20 years. So next, Steve suggests that they need more outreach to expand the network rapidly. And for those who come, they need to give them something to fight for. And as soon as he says that, Steve thinks of what the Grand Skull told him, who we now know to be Bucky Barnes. But back in issue 10, the Grand Skull had this whole speech where he asked Steve, what do you give them? And it's right there where Steve is like, we need to give them something to die for, if need be. And right there, Hank Pym's like, nah, I'm good on that, big dog. Why I'ma want something to die for? And right here, Doom addresses the elephant in the room, because he's like, we're going to have to use the Immortus engine to its full potential, because it's their greatest weapon. And Tony agrees, but this time he quotes Doom instead of the other way around, because like Doom said before, we'll have to think in 4 dimensions if we want to save the world. But it's like now Doom's like at least 4, because they may have to pull from some other dimensions aside from time. And Tony says that he's already been thinking about the possibilities. But also America makes a point here, because she basically points out that this could be them falling into the same mistake, with Tony, Doom, or Steve making all the decisions. So she's like, if this is going to work, they've got to be open to everyone's ideas, because they got to try everything to save everything. And this immediately reminds Doom of what Star-Lord said from the Future Guardians, when he said about Tony and Doom that one of them was going to be responsible for the untold suffering and death of trillions, and the other could save everything. And this causes him to immediately agree with America. And basically from there, Tony's like, top down didn't work, let's try bottom up. So that's where he scratches out Ultimates 2.0, and they all move on to Ultimates 3.0. And it's after this when we go back to Nick Fury and this person he's been talking to. Because now that they've given him the scoop, Director Fury's like, I assure you, I'm a man of my word. When the time comes, and the time will come, you and your husband will be spared. And it's here where we see that he's talking to Janet Van Dyne, because she has been an informant for Hand this whole time. And I gotta tell you, man, this twist right here, on top of what Hank said earlier, these things got me worried for that man's safety. And also, just to go back to what I mentioned earlier about Nick Fury, with us knowing that he's one of many life model decoys who have been destroyed and replaced time after time, well, with each one of them being updated to an extent, with a version of the other's memories, this has led to each Nick Fury acting a lot like the previous version, where the new one will repeat certain behaviors time and time again. Well, in this case, we're already seeing it, because the last Nick Fury we saw in Ultimate Universe 1 year in, he had his version of a similar plan where he planted hand agents in numerous locations around the world by giving them pseudo-physiologies and using strategic placement for these spies to be potential recruits for the Ultimates. And in the case of Janet Van Dyne, now that we know she's an informant, it really has me looking at this Nick Fury like, okay, yeah, you're definitely continuing the cycle. But we still have yet to know if Janet Van Dyne was recruited by the previous Nick Fury, who set her in place as a potential recruit, or she was brought in by this Nick Fury more recently. Because just based on the conversation and how uncomfortable she is with helping, it sounds like something more recent. And it definitely stirs up my concerns for what's going to happen with her and Hank down the line. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and let me know some of your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Because it's like as soon as we unpack one layer, there's plenty more still building. Because there's always something around the corner. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.